Hello friends! Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today it's time to talk through my most recent DNFs. I did a video similar to this in quarter one to talk about all of the DNFs of the year up to that point, and I don't know if I'm going to do this quarterly or if it's just going to be as DNFs come up, because I think I have more books. Well, I know I have more books in quarter two than in quarter one, and I probably need to maybe minimize the amount of books that I'm talking to you guys about, because there are a couple of these that I am very passionate about. I do have some that we're just going to breeze over, but I think maybe in the future it's not going to be a quarterly thing. It's just going to be, as I have 10 DNFs, I will come and talk to you guys about why I specifically DNF'd those. I typically don't do a lot of negative videos on my channel. I try and keep it positive here. So if this isn't your type of video, please feel free to skip this one. Come back next week. I will have something more cheery for you guys. But I do like to watch these types of videos because sometimes if someone is talking about a book that they absolutely hate and they give me reasoning behind it, I might be interested in the book because of those reasons. And so I do think it's an important thing to talk through. I think it also helps me develop what I like and what I don't like about books and maybe pick better books in the future. So I'm going to organize this in a way where I'm going to talk about some soft DNFs, so some books that I haven't given up on wholeheartedly that I might eventually get back to, and then some definite hard DNFs. I'm going to order my hard DNFs in such a way that I have, like, I'll talk to you guys about the books that I DNF'd at 10% and then at 15% and then at 20%, and just have the percentage get longer and longer as we go through the video. So starting with my soft DNFs, I'll just go through these really quickly because, as I said, I will probably get back to these at some point in time. The first one is A Rover Story. I got to 5% in this. It's a very, very short middle grade featuring a robot or a rover that is going on Mars, and humans follow this robot's process. I think they're trying to find a space on Mars where humans can move to. I don't know exactly the progression of events on Earth's surface, you know, in this book, or if that's even discussed in the story, but I started reading this during TAR. A lot of these DNFs did come from that readathon, and I just wasn't feeling it as I was reading it. I do think that it is something that I will eventually like. I just, in the moment when I was hyped up on the competition, I wanted to read something different. The other book, I think on my soft DNF list, the only other one, or no, I guess there's three that came from TAR. One of them is Benti. I got to 25% in this, although it's a very, very short audiobook, so that's not a lot of time that I spent reading. And I just wasn't understanding what was going on. I know this is about a girl who gets accepted into some type of academy, and her family doesn't necessarily want her to go, and so there's some troubling things that she has to deal with in that circumstance. I don't really know much about it past that point, and I would really like to give it like an honest try. I don't really think that my mind was in the right place for this book in the readathon. And then The Surviving Sky was the other book. I only got 1% in The Surviving Sky, so I really didn't give it any chance at all. Out of all of the soft DNFs that I'm going to talk to you guys about, this is the one that I'm probably least likely to pick up again, because I really just didn't care. In the 1% that I read, which I think was probably like 20 minutes, I don't remember how much exactly I read, because I listened to it on audio, I was not clicking with the writing style. I didn't care about the world, and I didn't give it a fair shot, so that's why I'm putting it under the soft DNFs, but I do think that this is probably the one that has the least chance of me picking it back up. And then the last soft DNF that I have is actually an Adrian Tchaikovsky, The City of Last Chances. I got to 30% of this story, and I really like the premise, but Adrian Tchaikovsky, in a couple of books that I've read, well, really just one, so Alien Clay and The Children of Time, both are books that I've read by Adrian Tchaikovsky that I really liked, but they take all of my attention. They are stories that I have to put in time, that are going to take me longer than any other book to read because I have to focus. And while I was reading The City of Last Chances, this is also while Battle of the Booktubers, I was reading certain books for them, and I was reading it physically as well. Well, I think I originally started with audio, and the audio just, it wasn't sinking in. So then I started reading it physically instead. And I think I was just really confused. I like the premise a lot. And I actually reread the first, I don't know, maybe 5% of the book, maybe 10% of the book. And after I reread it, I was like, this is fantastic. But I don't know that I had the attention span at that point in time to really trust the fact that I would understand the story at the end. So I did put it aside, but I do really want to get back to it. So those are my soft DNFs. Those are the books that I will probably pick up at one point and another just to try them again. Moving on to my hard DNFs. So the books that I will not come back to at any point in time, we'll start with the book that I have read the least of, and that is Autopsy of a Fairytale. This story I read less than 10%. I didn't actually write the exact amount, which I typically do in my bullet journal. I'll take a note of like what percent of the book that I got to. And I didn't do that for this one, but I know it was less than 10% because I didn't spend very much time with it. This book is touted as Beauty and the Beast. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling mixed with Criminal Minds. And I think that as I was reading it, the Criminal Minds tone definitely came through on page, and I'm just not interested in that type of story, which is weird because I have read recently, like right now I'm reading Strange Practice, and Strange Practice has a murder mystery in it, but it's different tonally than Criminal Minds. I don't know how else to describe it than that. It's a little thriller-y, and I haven't been having good luck with thrillers, so that's why this one, I did think about, I could finish it. It's not a very long book, but had I forced myself to do that, it probably would have ended up as a 3-star, and I'm just not, I don't want to force myself to read a book that I'm just gonna think is okay. So that's why this one got left in the dust. The next book, oh, you guys are gonna be mad at me. The next book I did DNF was Don't Let the Forest In. I got to 11% in this, and guys, I just can't do YA anymore. I feel really bad because there were a lot of people who did actually comment during this. I read this during TAR. There were a lot of people in the Discord that were talking to me about the fact that this book in particular doesn't read really YA. I mean, it is definitely YA, but some of the things I don't like about typical YAs is the dialogue, the angst. I'm not a fan of being in the heads of someone who is in their teenage kind of coming of age years. And I think mentally speaking, I don't like it. Those storylines bore me or make me mad or give me a little bit of the ick as I'm reading them. And unfortunately, the story, that was the case, because I think it's a mixture in this book of this book being YA and it being an obsession story. If you haven't heard of Don't Let the Forest In, you're following two boys who are, I don't know if they're high school age or if they're young college aged. I think they're high school, and at least from the vibes that I was getting, one of them has some type of a secret. Something happened, something dark happened, and they're not sharing with the other, and the other boy is quite obsessed with, I can't remember their names. One of them is Andrew, but I don't remember the other one's name. And so the very beginning of the book, the first 10%, is about this secret not being told and this other boy kind of pining and obsessing over the other main character. It also is supposed to have some art. One of them writes kind of horror stories and the other one draws the pictures. The one who draws the pictures is the one who has the secret and kind of makes these creatures come to life. And that's what I was really excited to see. And I didn't get to any of that because I just didn't like being in the obsessive head of a teenager. It's not something I enjoyed. So I did put this one down. The next book on this list is the book that I would recommend the most out of all of these on this list, because I do think that it's just a case that this book isn't meant for me, but I think it has a really beautiful story to tell. And I got to 26%. This is Awake in the Floating City. This is featuring an artist who is living in, I think it's San Francisco. I know it's in California, and this city has literally flooded. So everyone has moved to the rooftops or moved completely out of the city. And so you see the depletion of resources and the kind of critical infrastructure start to fail. I think that this world is very interesting. I mean, it's our world, but I think the way that they adapt to the streets being flooded and everything moving to rooftops and having to traverse stairwells, and they talked about like having dumb waiters and things for people to move things around buildings. I like the world building of a world that has been flooded and how humankind would kind of adapt, and the degradation, I guess, of the buildings, how water would eventually win out of all of our infrastructure that we've built. Eventually that's all going to decay and cause bigger and bigger issues. And our main character, our artist, is given a chance at the very beginning of the book to leave San Francisco and go and join family in a safer place. But she is asked by an elderly woman to stay and take care of her. There's also a storyline within this about the elderly kind of being abandoned by their families in these times and having to live in these really horrible situations on their own. And she decides to stay and take care of this elderly woman. The reason that this book didn't work for me is I do think it's written in a very literary style, which is just slightly dry, and I kept wanting more emotion, more like depth, I guess, more, and like more action, like let's move some places or have some world building that's not kind of surface level, and this book just didn't do that. I think it was really focused on the relationship between the artist and this elderly woman, which is fine. I think I just wanted a little bit more. I think it was really well written, and I think that there are going to be people who absolutely love this book and can live in it for a moment. I do think that what it's trying to do is very beautiful. It just didn't work for me. Next, we have a book for the podcast. There are actually two books for the podcast that are featured in this video, but the first one is The Shadow of the Wind. This I got to 28%, and if you want to know like my succinct thoughts while like right when I DNF'd it, what my thoughts were, you should go and check out that podcast episode where we talk about, because Leandra and I both DNF'd this, and we discuss exactly why. This book was presented to me in such a way that it was going to be a fantasy world where there's this secret library of books. This boy is going to have to hunt down the books that are disappearing by this author that he has given himself over to being like the protector of, or, you know, the person who keeps all of those works in their mind, but also like in circulation and talks about them, keeps them alive essentially. And that is so much not what this book is about. It was kind of frustrating. I do think that that's obviously an undertone. It's a subplot, but that was presented to me as the main storyline, and that's what I wanted. And this isn't. This is a coming of age story about a young boy who is grieving and is trying to replace his mother. I'm pretty sure it's his mother that ends up passing away at the very beginning, but is doing it in like a weird teenager way. You know, we've talked about the fact that I don't like being in the head of a YA character. That's what happened here, and I do think that there were some things that were described in the book that I just don't need. I don't need women's bodies to be described to me over and over and over again. Especially from a young boy's point of view, it's just not something that I enjoy. So I moved on from this. Glad that we didn't have to finish it for the podcast. I'm glad that we didn't have to have like a full-on discussion, because it probably wouldn't have been a very pleasant one. The next book on this list I've already talked to you guys about in my quarter one check-in when I talked about some books that I was going to read for my 25 and 2025. Written and Read did unfortunately make the list of my DNFs for second quarter. I read up to 30% of this book, and I do think that this story has some really interesting pieces, and I'm kind of bummed that there's just one piece of it that made me kind of cut it out. No pun intended, if you know the story. This book features a main character who I can't remember her name. She's a woman, a human, and she is a seer. So she has this ability where if she cuts herself, she can actually see different images in the future. And she escapes from somewhere that you are given like little glimpses and thinking that she's definitely being held captive. It was being used for the purposes of other people, and she doesn't want to be in this situation anymore. She escapes to a sanctuary of sorts for supernatural beings. You have werewolves and vampires. They're all kind of part of this sect, and there's like politics going on. They all have different branches of like the gene pool, I guess, with supernatural creatures, all different types of powers. And humans are not necessarily safe in this sanctuary because humans' rules don't matter. It's all based on the supernatural kind of hierarchy. And she goes here to be an ambassador for humankind because she's provided a little bit of protection from these humans that are now hunting her since she has escaped. All of that I found very fascinating. I think that it was really fast-paced. I enjoyed diving into the world of these supernatural creatures that have kind of accepted humans into the world, but definitely do not accept that they are the leaders of the world by any means. What I didn't enjoy was the magic system, the fact that she does have to cut herself to get her powers to work. And the way that it was described and depicted in the story made me really uncomfortable. So I made the decision for myself not to move forward. There are so many other books out there that I think I can fully enjoy the world and where the story is going and not have something that I don't want to read about in it. So that's why I let this one go. The next book is a book that I think you guys probably already know I DNF'd, but I haven't talked about it publicly yet. That is Dungeon Crawler Carl. I am not a fan. I DNF'd this at 31%. This book just had so many things in it that I find problematic that I couldn't continue. So that's the main reason behind why I didn't really enjoy the story. If you haven't heard of this book, it's about a man named Carl who gets put into a world dungeon. The entire world is destroyed. The apocalypse happens. Everything that is covered, houses, bridges, is completely destroyed and sucked underground. And anyone in those dwellings was killed. And the people who are remaining are allowed to go into this dungeon area and compete for the control of their world. And it's all for the amusement of these aliens. The first 50-ish pages, I think, were very fun, fast-paced. I thought they definitely leaned into kind of the gamer-ness of the scenario that this character is in. And I liked that. I liked all the callbacks to like getting loot boxes and getting power-ups and leveling up. Like there were a lot of really fun things, but we had these little moments that I found unnecessary and not funny. We had some jokes about some special needs children. We also had a scene with a Hispanic woman essentially being tortured. And there were so many of these kind of little pieces that I was like, I don't know. This book kind of makes me feel icky. And so I decided not to continue. I know that there has been kind of a big discussion on BookTube recently about this book. And if you have opinions, feel free to share. I have mine as well. So I hope that you guys will be cordial in the comments if you do have differing opinions than me. This is just kind of where I stand on this book. Next, we have The Broken Heart of Arelium. I got to 34% in this book. This you are following I don't even know what the main premise. Oh no, I do. I remember. It's been a minute. There is kind of a dark secret. Years passed, centuries passed. There was a great evil that was forced underground by a whole bunch of warriors. I can't remember what they called them in the book. And those people went on to create these societies and had lots of power within their family. Well, now that buried deep enemy has come back, and they have the walls that are surrounding this kind of civilization that are supposed to protect them of you know, from this great evil. They are the watchers that are supposed to make sure that this great evil doesn't return. It does. It starts killing people. Honestly, I just thought that this was, I hate to say this, but I kind of felt like it was generic. I'd read the storyline before, and there wasn't anything really gripping me with any of the characters that I was following. And so I read the last page that I read, and then I never picked it up again. It wasn't even a conscious decision. I forgot that I was reading the book. So it's just one I decided that I don't need to go back to. The next one I'm not actually going to talk about in this video. That is The Spear Cuts Through Water. I got to 38% of this book, and I did an entire vlog on my DNFing process. So if you would like to see my rant of why I decided to DNF this book, I'll link it in the cards and in the description down below, so you guys can go and check that out. It's one of my Battle of the Booktuber vlogs, so have fun with that. Next we have The Ministry of Time, which I DNF'd at 41%. I think that this is another case of it being a little too literary for me. I don't think that this one was as much as Awake in the Floating City, but I do think that there was not enough action and not enough movement, I guess, in this story for me. I am a character-driven reader. I didn't care about any of these characters. If you haven't heard of Ministry of Time, it's following a literal like organization that goes back in time and takes people who are not going to impact the future because they would have died in their past timelines, and implants them into the future to see if there are bad ramifications on the human psyche from being moved from one timeline to the other. They also have, the reason it's called the Ministry of Time is because they have people who take these people under their wings. They're called bridges, and make sure that they can adapt, you know, or kind of they're there to be their buddy throughout the process. And I guess I wanted the implantation of someone from, you know, the 1500s into the, I don't know, past the 2000s to be more dramatic. And really it seemed, one of the main characters that we're following is a very stoic character. And I just didn't, he more like went into himself when he had all these kind of panicky moments instead of outwardly expressing the craziness that it would be to come from your timeline to something that's been well more developed and technologically advanced. And I just was a little underwhelmed with what was happening. And obviously we start following their storylines, their past, how they feel. They also get to talk to other people who've been implanted into the future. I just didn't care. It lost my interest. So I do think that some of the themes that were being covered, I do think that it's written in a literary way. And so I think that it has a broad reach in that scope. It's just not my preference. So yeah, this one I left behind as well. The next book was another Tar book. I read 51% of Lightfall. And honestly, it's a testament to this book, or testament to my DNF, that I don't remember much about this book. It's about the last supernatural city, but it's really the last vampire city on the Earth's surface. There have been, or not, I don't know if it's Earth. It's a fantasy world. There have been what are called the Greys that have come up, and they've killed a whole bunch of vampire and werewolf kind. And I don't know. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought that we were going to be in Lightfall, and I don't think that we are. I think that we're in a different city, and one of our characters is talking about like these memories, not even memories because she wasn't in Lightfall, but these like historical moments that she remembers being told about Lightfall, kind of what was, you know, this great city that has now fallen. And I don't know. I didn't cling to any of the characters. There's also some politics going on. There's a death of one of the vampires by the Greys that they're investigating. There were a lot of moving pieces, but it was just kind of meh for me. So, and I don't remember much more than that. So moving on. The next one I got to 51% was the Amalfi Curse. This was one that I think the dual timelines ruined it for me. So you are following two timelines, one of which is the timeline, I think, that eventually explains the curse of the Amalfi Coast. And then the other, which is, I think, considered the main timeline, is the treasure hunter whose father has passed away. There's a buried treasure. There's a sunken ship in the Amalfi Coast, and they are there to figure out what the treasure, or what is inside the ship, to kind of explore the inside of the ship. But they know, like, as soon as they get to the Amalfi Coast, bad things start happening, and they're talking about this curse. I was way more invested in the past timeline, figuring out where the curse comes into play, and every time we went back to the modern timeline, I was like, I don't care. There's no treasure hunting. Like, we're just really talking about how hard it is for her to be, like, an underwater diver, and I needed more adventure in the modern timeline for me to even care about it. So I think that this would have been more interesting to almost have, instead of 2 timelines, a timeline of the Amalfi Curse being created, because I found that fascinating, and then either a time break where we jump 50 years, or even like a scattering of timelines in the future that were, you know, this curse comes into play. It just didn't do that. So not for me. Goddess of the River. So this is actually a physical TBR book that I wanted to read by Vaishnavi Patel, who is an author of Kai Kai, which I dearly loved. And honestly, I think that the reason I ended up DNFing this at 51% is because it's a motherhood story. I have hit or miss moments with motherhood stories. This you're following the Goddess of the River, Ganga? What was it? Ganga. I think it's Ganga. And she becomes human for reasons I don't really want to tell you because it's a little bit of a spoiler. And she ends up having to do certain things with the children that she has in order to help them, even though it's harmful to them. So that part I didn't enjoy. I would absolutely check trigger warnings. Child death is very, very apparent in here. So that's something I would be careful of as well. It's something I didn't really like seeing, although I understand, I do think that it's part of the original story, because this is a mythology retelling. And her decisions, like her kind of tragedy with losing her son, the one who is alive. She has a son who is alive, and there are circumstances where he gets kind of taken away from her. I decided at that point that I didn't really care to see the end. I don't know where it goes. I don't know if she gets her son back, if there's a happy ending or not. So since I didn't really care, I decided not to continue. But yeah, if you are going to read this, definitely check trigger warnings, because I do think that there's some content in it that you should watch out for. Okay, 2 books left, guys. We have the Posthumous Memoirs of Cubas, which I got to 54% in. This is another podcast book, so if you want to see my opinion, we did 2 full episodes on the Memoirs of Cubas, and I gave you all of my views there. Really, I did not like the main character. I did not like the objectification of women in the storyline. I thought it was gross. It's just not a story for me. But if you want my overall thoughts, you can go and check out the podcast. I'll link that so you guys have that available to you. And the last book that I will talk about, I got to 64% and decided I just didn't want to finish, and that is Of Monsters and Mainframes. I'm very sad about this, and I do think that this book has a place and it will find its audience, because I think that it does some really cool things. I am not a fan of episodic writing, usually. There's certain books, Delegate Dream Department Store is kind of episodic, and I loved that. So I do think that it works for me sometimes, but it's very hit or miss. And I think that this is just one of the hits or misses. I also think that some expectations of the storyline were not great. Monsters and Mainframes was described as a ship named Demeter, who is a shuttle ship. She transports humans from one planet to the next and makes sure that they're safe. And the people on her ships keep dying. And she finds out that Dracula, or thinks that Dracula is the one killing them, and decides to go on kind of a revenge mode, or, you know, a revenge storyline for her. And I was all for that. But unfortunately, that's not really the focus. I mean, that is something that happens, but that is not the whole story. We actually have a lot of different things that happen within Demeter's ship, and we have lots of different characters. It's not just Dracula that come into play. And I wanted, I don't know. I wanted it to just be Dracula. I wanted there to also be an explanation. There's not really an explanation for anything that's going on, at least in the 64% that I read. So maybe that changes. The episodic nature of the story as well definitely makes it hard for me to make character connections, which is probably what would have held me over to the end of the storyline to actually complete the book. But because I didn't have those character connections, I didn't mind putting it down and never picking it up again. So unfortunately, this didn't work for me. I do think that it will work for a lot of people. So if it's something that interests you, I wouldn't say don't read it. So those are my 18 DNFs that I have made since the last time I talked to you guys about DNFs. I hope that you found something in here that either deters you from reading a book because you don't want to waste your time, or that maybe piques your interest because you have different reading tastes than me. I would love to hear if any of these books, you know, hit either of those notes for you guys in the comments down below. If you are not feeling chatty, but you still want to let me know that you are here, leave me a little Dracula emoji in the comments down below for Monsters and Mainframes. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.